Hello friends, welcome back. Episode 2 of Sweet Tooth Season 2 shifts the perspective to follow the big man, Jepperd. During the early days of the crumble, he's desperate to find his family. Unfortunately, that's not possible, given his home is but a remnant of what once was, a graveyard of old memories for a life that's long past. Lausha and their son are both lost. Jepp's looked everywhere for her and he's coming up short. Jepp appears to find salvation outside in a guy called Coach, who encourages him to join the last men in a bid to find his family. As Jeep looks set to shake the proverbial devil's hand, we cut back to the present. Jepperd wakes up and finds Amy there with him. She's the one who saved his life, and after the hijinks involving the hybrid kids, she's desperate to get them back. Jepp knows it'll be like a fortress and wants to get them back his way. Eventually, he concedes with Amy's plan, though when Gus shows up on the radio, catching us up to the moments in episode 1, with the pair in the transmission room, and they both work together to get the kids back. Amy sneaks her way in, posing as a guard delivering goods, intent on doing a bit of recon to find out where the kids are being kept. Jepp shows up posing as a guard, when things get awkward with the suspicious guard. In fact, they knock him out, and then end up blowing their cover completely. Just before they hurry out, Jepp puts the familiar Teddy inside the kibble, before they rush out the old tunnels and leave. This catches us up to the moments at the end of episode 1, as Gus and Wendy organize the rest of the kids to be vigilant and ready for a potential prison break. Unfortunately, the guards arrive first before that, led by Johnny. He knows the kids are hiding something, but for now, he concedes with taking Gus to the lab, given Adee Singh wants to see him. In a room full of purple flowers, Singh decides to use hypnosis on Gus to see if that will trigger his memory. It actually seems to work, as he's encouraged to venture forth in his visions through a variety of different biomes before heading back home to his cabin in the woods. When that doesn't work, Singh has him go back further in time to the lab he was made. Apparently, it's Project Midnight Sun at somewhere called Fort Smith. This seems to be where the virus was created. At the same time, Ronnie manages to convince Johnny to let her see all the kennels. Amy and Jepp try to fix a broken truck to head out, while the kids inside the cages try to no avail to get Bobby's tracker off. With the truck now working, Amy and Jepp drive out and away from the city, determined to live to fight another day. That is after escaping soldiers with guns, and a particularly pesky drone too. Gus, on his way back to the cage, stumbles and picks up some crayons from the floor. When he returns to the cage, he uses those to draw out his cabin for the other kids. Their perfect refuge to live in when all of this is done. As for Becky, she finds herself in lieu with a bunch of travelers, while Jepp and Amy continue to try and find another plan to break the kids out. Episode 3 starts with a question. What would it be like to age without disease? This is something geneticist Jillian Washington over at Fort Smith is trying to establish during our opening flashback. This Project Midnight Sun is her brainchild, and so it seems like she's responsible for what eventually ensues. She steps up to give a big speech, but we cut back to the present before seeing the context of this. Back in the cages, Wendy struggles to keep the other kids in check as they start to become jealous of Gus, given he gets to leave all the time. Of course, we know that he's been talking to Adee Singh about what's been happening and concocting a potential cure. Ronnie also knows that the hybrids may talk and discusses with Adee the notion of karma and how many lives have been sacrificed for her. Adee is exhausted, barely keeping it together, but he's holding on to the idea of finding a cure. Next stop though is Fort Smith. Jepp and Amy show up at a free city called Factory Town off the dock, complete with quarantine pods for anyone infected with the virus. They need to find the Hickey brothers, who are apparently just past the cantina. Unfortunately, Doomsday has got them already, and they're actually dead. Jepp is not happy and decides to drink moonshine to push past the grief, when a woman called Vanessa begins shouting at the pair inside the bar, refusing to let them use the phone. As she's waiting for her wife to pick up, Jepp's kind words and empathetic ear is enough to let Amy use the phone and cryptically ask for help from her contacts. Meanwhile, Becky finds herself with a whole caravan of different people. Unfortunately, one of the kids, Jordan, actually happens to be the son of a deceased soldier killed by the Animal Army, the army that used to be run by Becky and is now controlled by Tiger. Unfortunately, these guys are being persuaded to join General Abbott through bribery and treats, which Becky sees straight through. Gus shows up at Fort Smith with Adee and the guards. Despite the place having been swept clean, Adee is convinced they'll find something that'll help toward a clue. Time is of the essence though, and they've only got an hour inside. Unfortunately, they're not alone. There's someone else in the hallway. Well, something else anyway. It's actually just chickens. The lead guard, Hulk, tries to keep his rage in check as Gus messes about through the hallways and tries to find clues of his past. He does eventually hit a breakthrough when he finds Pubba's desk, including a whole bunch of different gizmos. Among those happen to be keys. However, it turns out they actually aren't alone, as a crocodile suddenly comes storming down the hallway and starts ripping the guards to bits. Gus manages to talk to it though, and it's here we learn that he too is actually a hybrid and just scared. Gus learns his name is Peter, but unfortunately he's hit with a tranquilizer dart and tied up, taken back to the preserve on Addie's orders. Meanwhile, the last men show up and force everyone in the community outside. General Abbott is leading the charge, and he takes to the stage in Factory Town, greeting everyone and calling them all survivors. His real play here is to recruit more people to his cause, and with a vial in hand, proclaimed to be the cure to the virus. Amy and Jep realize that Abbott is using these people to spread the word and recruit more to his side. Back at Project Midnight, Addie and Gus watch a video where Washington introduces her lead scientist on the matter, Dr. Gertrude Miller. This is Birdie, and she talks about the research they've been doing, including microbes that they found in the ice that could be used to supercharge the immune system. They've also found something to change life itself, and that comes from the hybrid children, specifically Gus. He's the very first hybrid. The chickens are also important too though, given they've also been used in the experiments, and Addie realizes that their eggs could lead to a cure. Over at the cages, Wendy is forced to concede and open up about what really happened to Roy. The faint glimmers of hope are shattered, thanks to one of the guards taunting them and revealing the horrific truth. Speaking of hope, General Abbott takes out the cured man from Factory Town and has him killed in cold blood in the middle of nowhere. Meanwhile, Becky learns that Gus and the other hybrids are being kept in Essex Zoo, and finally has a crucial clue to find him in order to hand over the cassette tape. This could be the most important clue, so Becky decides to enlist to be part of the last men to give her a solid way in. As the episode closes out, we cut back to Factory Town once more as the phone there rings for Amy and Jep. Episode 4 starts with us over at Factory Town, with the villagers believing they have a cure. They all start partying like there's no tomorrow. The irony here, of course, is that there may not be given the cure as a lie. Anyway, Amy and Jep know the real deal here, as the former meets with her contacts, the Air Lords. These guys are mercenaries, and for them, money talks. Jep and Amy head down to the dock, but unfortunately, they're ambushed and taken away in a van out of Factory Town. Meanwhile, the kids confront Gus about lying regarding Roy's death. Gus admits he did lie, but only to protect everyone and to try and keep them safe. He does his best to persuade them, but unfortunately, they're done with him. In fact, they no longer want him to be part of their escape, and they're going to do so without his interference. The way they see it, Gus is special given he keeps getting time with the scientist, so he won't be harmed. In the lab, Addie Singh works like a man possessed, desperate to find out about the chickens, eggs, and how all of this works together to create a potential cure. The reaction to the antigen seems to be successful after preliminary tests, and when he processes the results, it seems like the virus has been eradicated from the subject. Ronnie shows up in the lab, and Addie excitedly whispers to her that he's found a real cure. He needs to process the fifth dose, and then he can give it to her, and she'll be completely free. However, it obviously comes at a cost. Addie has blood on him, and after the pair embrace, Ronnie is concerned, believing he's killed a hybrid to get it, and we soon find out that's precisely what he's done. Jep and Amy are taken to Dolly, who's in charge of these mercenaries. Amy gives an impassioned plea to use their help to get the kids back. However, Dolly refuses to do so until they come up with something tangible to sink their teeth into and make the journey worth taking. Jep is the master at persuasion here and brings up the spoils of war, including how they could get their hands on everything inside the zoo. Oh, and there's a tank there too. That's enough to convince Dolly and the others to play ball and start their operation. Rufus ruffles Jep's feathers the entire time. They come up with a plan and even demeans Amy too. This is enough for Jep to lash out and beat him down, until Dolly brandishes a gun and forces him outside. All of this pent-up aggression stems from the big man's past, where he's haunted by the ghosts of his past. Given he was one of the men listed as a hybrid catcher, he doesn't know if it was actually him that took the kids, but he has to live with the fact he tore families apart to get his own in check. Amy is not happy when she learns this truth from him and walks away. Becky arrives at boot camp for the last men. Lou is the one in charge here, and he starts to organize traffic for these new recruits. Becky keeps the cassette hidden as she prepares for training too. She immediately takes Lou's eye after he sees her excellent shooting skills and tells her she's going to make a fine soldier one day. Back in the cages, Bobby sits with Gus and admits that he trusts him. In fact, he manages to take off his collar using the pliers that Gus managed to nab last episode. Bobby decides to sneak through the tunnels to find help. General Abbott returns to the zoo and tries to keep his anger in check when he learns what's been going down while Johnny has been in charge. "Why do you make me regret trusting you?" he growls before walking away. Johnny tries to find solace with Ronnie, who's still spooked about what's happened with Addie. In fact, it's here he admits that General Abbott is his brother. Even worse, she's going to need an escort from now on. As for Abbott, he speaks to Addie and learns that he's found a cure, using Peter as well and breaking the promise to Gus. However, Abbott takes the cure and decides that Addie isn't free just yet. In fact, he prolongs the agony and invites him to dinner that night. Whilst there, Ronnie encourages Johnny to join them. Given this is a dinner for family, the group toast and eventually eat together, although the mood is undeniably awkward the entire time. In fact, Abbott stokes the flames here by mentioning the importance of family and how one must do what they have to survive. Their dinner is interrupted as destiny intervenes. The people whom Abbott tried to meet with earlier in the season have finally agreed to meet. Ronnie is convinced Abbott is a complete lunatic, and she's even more shocked when Addie tells her that he's starting to come around to his way of thinking. Meanwhile, the guards decide to taunt the kids in the cages with tasers. However, Gus intervenes and rushes into one of the men, breaking free from the cage and attempting to run away. He's stopped when he bumps into General Abbott though, who smiles evilly, the fire reflecting in his glasses. "It's so nice to meet you, Gus." As for Bobby, he makes it out the drains, doing a little Shawshank Redemption satire in the process before leaving. At the same time, Becky joins the soldiers as they prepare to rush into a home that presumably holds hybrid children. Jeb's confession comes back to haunt him as Amy decides to leave Jeb behind on her mission to get the kids. She thinks Gus is better off without him, and she takes off in a helicopter ready for the mission ahead. Jeppard is not about to leave things lying down though, and decides to travel out on a van. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we hope you enjoyed episodes of Sweet Tooth.